Welcome to Film 5D, the show about everything film, and now the a7s III. I'm Aaron Hammock, and as you probably already know, the a7s III was finally announced yesterday. I've already placed my pre-order, so let's just take this time to jump into my 6 favorite features on the spec sheet. Now, unlike a lot of YouTubers you probably watch, I didn't actually get this camera to test out, but I did place my pre-order, so as soon as it comes out, and along with everybody else getting it and doing their tests, I will also be doing some tests, so we'll talk about at the end any suggestions you might have for tests I should do. But let's look at the announcement and see what specs we like. Now, obviously, this camera was delayed for a few years, so expectations were sky high. I don't think I've been this hyped personally for a camera since the Canon 5D Mark III, which came out all the way back in 2012. But does it meet my expectations? Let's find out. First, I want to take a look back at my predictions video that I made last year. It was actually the second predictions video I made for the rumored a7s III. Now, how close was I? And do the specs and features actually match up? Well, in July 2019, I made these 5 predictions. Number 1, 4K 60 FPS. Okay, this is done. Check mark. In fact, double it. 120 FPS at 4K, 10-bit internally as well. And that goes on to my number 2, which is 10-bit video internal. And that's also done, and at 120p, which is absolutely insane. I think most of us expected 60p for this, but to get 10-bit video across all the codecs and all the frame rates, that's just amazing. Number 3 was a full HDMI port. Now, this one was actually kind of a bit of a stretch. I didn't think they'd actually do it, but thank God there's no more micro HDMI on the a7s III. Number 4 was 6K 24p. Not gonna be able to do it. Sensor still stuck at 12.1 megapixels and not 24, like I had predicted. And number 5, that all the A7 Mark III features, the improved IBIS, the 2x SD card slots, and a selfie touchscreen. So there you have it. 4 for 5 ain't bad at all. Unfortunately, we won't be getting that 6K, even the more detailed downscale to 4K version, but I get why they didn't do it, and we're gonna go into that in a second. They wanted to give us the purest, fully featured 4K mirrorless camera to date, without all the extra heat generated by having an even higher resolution sensor. And 3 months ago, I don't think anyone, including myself, was expecting the 4K to also be available at 120p slow motion, which is pretty sweet in my opinion, and probably more useful for a lot of people than having 5K or 6K for certain projects that a lot of us are doing. Now, in a minute, I'm gonna give you the 6 features I'm most excited about with this new camera. But first, let's look at some honorable mentions, not the least of which is the 9+ million pixel EVF. I must say, ever since I switched from my DSLR to mirrorless back in 2014, one thing I do miss is the viewfinders, particularly when it comes to focus accuracy. Now don't get me wrong, I love being able to see a live exposure with the EVFs on mirrorless cameras. I'm just glad that with these extra pixels, it will be much easier to nail focus. I mean, it has about 4 times the resolution as a viewfinder on my a7s II. I also love that this new a7s supports 2 different types of SD cards, including the CF Express card type A, which is an alternative option for recording high bit rates, and a brand new type of card. And that's why I'm a bit worried that these will be expensive, especially if only Sony versions will be available at first. They announced a few coming out as soon as September, and they're definitely not cheap. I myself pre-ordered the 160GB one just to have one and test it out. I wouldn't personally recommend going out and investing in a bunch of these, especially since it's a new format and who knows how long it'll stick around, but definitely to unlock some of the all-eye codecs and using, you know, some of the different codec features, you might wanna give these a go. Also, Sony finally added a flip-out selfie screen to one of their full-frame mirrorless cameras. Now, this is probably in a lot of people's top features. I personally didn't mind the tilting screen, but I guess I will be using this camera without a monitor more often, since all the codecs are kind of built right into it, and it's gonna have all the bit rates, and it's gonna have the non-recording limit, which we're gonna talk about in a second. So maybe I will end up using this feature more than I currently think I will, but we'll see. Now, another honorable mention is the reduced rolling shutter, which is great and very important for full frame cameras. Yet another reason I think they stuck with the 12.1 megapixel sensor to pull off stuff like this. Not to mention all the other upgrades this camera gets over the previous version, you know, the battery life, the button layout, and not the least of which is the faster and more accurate autofocus. But with those out of the way, let's talk about my top 6 features I am looking forward to most, and these are going to be in order for my personal workflow and use case. Number 1, this one's pretty obvious, I think, 4K 120 FPS. This speaks for itself. We also have full HD slow-mo up to 240 FPS, and full HD actually does look good on the a7s III, unlike a lot of other mirrorless cameras. And the 4K 120 does have a slight crop of 1.1 times, but that's to be expected and should be workable, and we'll definitely give that up, and you'll still get the full frame 1:1 pixel ratio on that, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Number 2 is the full HDMI port. For some, this might be lower on their list, but honestly, I've been wanting this forever. I even bought one of those HDMI conversion accessories for my original a7s I, and those weren't cheap. I mean, even the brand new Canon R5 that just came out this month doesn't have an HDMI port or full HDMI port. It still has the HDMI mini. And this HDMI port is actually going to be HDMI 2.1. So you might have to wait a little bit for some of the other brands like the a7s and their Shoguns and stuff like that to catch up here in order to get the full use out of this port, especially when it comes to that 16-bit RAW that you can push through that HDMI port. Now, number 3 is a two-parter for me. First of all, S-Log3 is now available at 640 ISO, and you can actually expand that down to 160 ISO, which is absolutely insane. And then number 2, Sony claims 15 stops of dynamic range. From what I'm seeing online, that's gonna be more like 13 stops of usable dynamic range, but that's still best in class. And yet another good reason for not increasing the resolution on this camera. I was calling for the 24 megapixel, but we have other cameras that can do photography like that if you need to. Most of us don't even need more than 12 megapixels anyways. I just kind of wanted the more higher detail, 4K image that could be downsampled or even a 6K resolution if possible. But I understand giving up all those potential features to have the higher dynamic range and just the better light sensitivity with those individual pixels that can be so much bigger on a smaller sensor like this one. Also, I probably shoot an S-Log more than any other picture profile. So I hope that this will, 1, reduce noise in the shot, which is going to be one of the first things I test when I get my hands on this camera. And 2, allow me to use S-Log in more shooting situations, especially when shooting outdoors in very bright environments like at the beach, for example. Now, number 4 is no recording limits for most shooting modes. This is very good for my corporate workflow where I often record for hours at a time. Now, I won't need an a7s Shogun just to record longer sessions. Also, unlike some of the competition, most people in the reviews coming out are saying that they're not experiencing any overheating warnings, even outdoors and in direct sunlight, which is really great to hear. Number 5 is 10-bit video. Now, this one's personally new for me. I have never used 10-bit before. None of my monitors are 10-bit. So I kind of want to pass this on to you guys. Do you think this is going to be worth using? I personally think that I'll probably shoot in 10-bit no matter what anyways, just to future-proof my stuff and to help with editing and to help with color correction so that the image doesn't break down as quickly. And obviously we know the whole banding thing with the sky, but that's very limited that typically happens. But we'll see. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments how you use 10-bit. Have you edited with it? Is it worth it to use every time? And yeah, just let me know. And then finally, my number 6 is the touchscreen and updated menu layout. I really wasn't expecting them to do the updated menu, but I'm really glad they did. They did say that everything on this camera was new as they started teasing this camera about a month ago. And that made me really excited. Finally, on the same playing field as the GH4 and all the other Panasonic mirrorless cameras that have come out for the past 5 years. It's going to be really great to have that new menu layout. Right when I get the camera, I'll probably do just a full video on the menu layout. Let me know in the comments if you'll be interested in that. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'd probably know that I originally started with the Canon 5D Mark II back in 2011 with the start of this channel. And then I switched to the Sony a7s in 2014. At that point, I sold all my Canon lenses and have since expanded my Sony FE lenses collection to 7 and counting now. So needless to say, I'm pretty ingrained in the Sony ecosystem at this point. Now, having said this, when rumors first started surfacing about the new EOS R5 and its 8K video in a mirrorless camera form factor, I definitely briefly considered that I might have to end up switching back to Canon, which I wasn't looking forward to. But after seeing some of the recording limits as well as the hard to edit codecs and now seeing the specs of the a7s III, I can confidently say that I will not be switching anytime soon. But let's talk about price. The first A7S was $2,500, followed by $3,000 for the A7S II, and now the A7S III is priced right at $3,500. And I think this makes sense with all the features being added between each generation. I think this is the biggest leap from generation to generation in terms of specs. And that's not even taking inflation into account. But let's be honest, Sony knows that this is one of their most hyped camera releases of all time. So yeah, I pretty much think they could have charged whatever they wanted to and we would have paid for it. And at this price, I think it's a steal, and anybody complaining about it, I don't know what to tell you. Now, I'm planning on releasing a series of videos over the next few months as soon as I can get my hands on this camera. And I definitely have a few things that I want to put to the test right away, especially like the S-Log3 noise and stuff like that, especially at 10-bit, and see how much better that's working for me. But is there anything you'd like me to test and post on my channel? If so, please let me know in the comments below. Either way, be sure that you're subscribed to make sure you catch those upcoming videos, but let me know in the comments, are you going to be buying an A7S III? And I'm curious, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with this announcement? I think I'm probably around an 8 or a 9 personally. I don't always buy every single camera when they become available. In fact, I really only buy a new camera every 3 or so years. But this one is definitely my next A camera, and it's gonna help me out a ton in the work that I do. In the end, I think they gave us exactly what we were asking for. This camera seems to be the ultimate fan service camera, which is actually pretty surprising from Sony, as if they spent the last 3 to 4 years browsing forums and addressing the wants and needs of the digital video community. And quite frankly, as sexy as 8K is, no one was really asking for that. I mean, it's a good marketing, 8K, wow, whatever. In fact, most computers these days would struggle to even edit or store 8K footage, and in terms of delivery, 4K still isn't universally accepted across all TVs and all delivery platforms and all streaming services today. So why do we need 8K? Hell, I have a 9900K CPU and a Titan RTX graphics card in my machine. That's top of the line hardware, and I'm not sure how well that would handle 8K footage for a long extended period of time, or even 4K 120p 10-bit 422 video like this A7S III has. So I'm definitely going to be testing that. Now, links for the products mentioned in this video are in the description below. Buying through my links helps us support the channel so I can make more videos like this one, and I really do appreciate it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and feel free to hit me up on Twitter at filmin5d. I'll catch you in the next one. If you haven't subscribed yet, you can do so by clicking the button on screen. And for more information about the new Sony a7S III, check out my blog over on my website at filmin5d.com. Thanks again for watching.